In this lecture, we'll explore Lightroom's Radial Filter. Before we get started, please load image ny003.jpg in the Develop module. By looking at this image, we can see that most of it is grayscale, which adds a very cinematic effect to the overall composition. Earlier, when we worked with the gradient filter, you would have noticed that the adjustments we applied were done so in a linear fashion, either vertically or horizontally. The radial filter allows us to make basic adjustments in a circular method rather than linear. For this example, we'll be adding dramatic shadows and highlights to this image using the radial filter. To get started, activate the radial filter tool by clicking on it over here. As soon as you click on it, you'll see the adjustments the same way we did with the graduated filter. And in this case, what we want to do is decrease the exposure of the road in comparison to the rest of the shot. We'll need to start out by drawing our radius. So hold your left mouse button down and just draw a circle out. And try to have the middle of the circle encompass as much of the road as possible. Okay, so now in my adjustments panel, the color temperature has changed. So I'm going to set that back to 0 because I did not want to affect the color temperature. What I did want to do was decrease the exposure of the road in comparison to the rest of the shot. So as I'm making this adjustment, you can see that the area that's being impacted is actually the area behind the radius that I've drawn. What I'll need to do here is invert this mask. So place a check mark in the invert mask checkbox. And that way, the adjustments we make are going to be impacted inside the radius of our circle. So you can see here I've decreased the exposure value of the road, and that the exposure has been decreased intensely in the center of our radius, and then it gradually transitions out. If you want to reposition the radius, you can. Just click on the pin and drag your mouse to the new location. If you want to change the size or rotate it, you can as well. Just drag any of these handles here to expand or contract it. To rotate it, position your mouse just slightly above the perimeter of the filter and you can rotate it. Hold your left mouse button down and just drag it to suit your needs. Okay, so in addition to the exposure, I'm also going to bring down the shadows a bit. Okay, so that's the difference between lightening them and darkening them. So now I'm only targeting the darker range of colors within my filter. So this is the before and after. So as you can see, it's a bit more dramatic. Now let's go ahead and add another radial filter to a different part of this image. So let's say, for example, we wanted to target the rocks. I'm going to decrease the exposure. I'm going to invert the mask. And once again, my color temperature, I'm just going to bring that back down to 0. I only want to affect the exposure. Similar to the graduated filter, if you hover your mouse down over the pin, you see a red mask that indicates exactly where our exposure setting starts and where it transitions out. You can switch from each filter by clicking on its corresponding pin. If you don't want to see the pins, then you can edit the Show Edit Pins option, just like we did with the other tools that we worked with. Okay, so to see the completed effect, this is before and this is after. If you want to apply the effect, click the Done button. and it'll render the effect on the image. And so we hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and we'll see you in the next lecture.